and the chairs so you can see and hear, so I hope it works. Good evening and welcome to the final installment of our series, Growing Up in Mt Airy. So if you're getting tired of it, you'll say hooray. And I wanted to thank so many of you, I'm looking at lots of faces, who have participated. It's been wonderful. It was fun and it was a lighthearted theme. Tonight's speakers will be the Beck family, Sam, Margaret, and Cliff, Pat Norwood, and Alfred Schmidt. I don't believe Carol Colbert is here, is she? Okay. I talked to Cliff about the use of a microphone. We had a nice little conversation on the phone. We decided that they are hateful things and they should go in the garbage. So I particularly apologize to Susan. I forced it on her the week she presented and she struggled mightily with it. And before the program was over, I said, that's the end of that. So, all speakers speak up. If somebody here can't hear, just raise your hand. How's that? We worked that out over the phone. I would also ask the audience now to use your imagination as the Becks present. They're going to be seated at the dining room table. Sharing their memories. Hold on, I got something else here. I didn't want to break it, so I had to wrap it up. And on that platter is turkey dinner. So, imagine they're going to come up here, and I put them here. So, Cliff and Sam and Margaret, come on up.
Well, I'm the middle child, so I better sit in the middle.
I'm the baby.
We'll go around the other side. Thank you all for coming tonight. We'll try to go quick.
You got 45 minutes.
45?
45.
I bet we can beat that. I thought before we talked about our specific time here in Mt Airy that I'd give you all a little history lesson. Because apparently our family's been in this area for quite a while. We've had members of the family have done some research, not on the Beck family, but on the Bale family, which was Herman's Marie's family. My grandparents, Herman Beck, first fire chief, and his wife Marie was from the Bale family. So I'm going to go back and just to give you a little context, Carroll County got its first white settlers of any number right around the 1700s, up into 1715. By the 1740s, land grants were being issued to provide ownership to the lands around here, out to the west of Baltimore. And also in the 1740s, the Shawnee were just starting to leave this area and move west. About that time, there was the Bale family. Peter Bale was born in 1747, and he came over on a ship with his sister Anne Mary and his parents to be the first members of our family in the Americas. Peter came over on the ship. He was probably 5, 6 years old, sister a little bit younger. and his parents died on the ship on the way over. So they arrived in America as orphans, and we're not sure how the name Bale came about, but we know nothing about the parents' names or what country they came from. So they were taken in by a family by the name of Nicodemus, who lived just southeast of Westminster. And Peter and his sister lived with them. Peter eventually settled he married into the Haynes family from the Pipe Creek area, and eventually bought a farm and settled in an area called Gypsy Hill, which is just north of Taylorsville. His sister, Anne Mary, she eventually married into the Nicodemus family. Peter married into the Haynes family from the Pipe Creek area. My grandmother, Marie, she, of course, married Herman Beck Sr., and she was the originator of Beck's Hatchery here in Mount Airy. She was in the neighborhood of a 7th, 8th generation descendant of Peter, and that kind of leaves us as 9th, 10th generation members of that family. For the Beck family, our earliest recollections, at least so far, are that they are from the Barrett section of Carroll County, just south of Route 26 and 97. They had a farm over there, and they have been written up in stories about Carroll County farming, but because of their efforts to create one of the earliest ice ponds on their farm, where they harvested ice for their ice houses to keep their produce fresh. As my granddad, Herman, grew up, World War I came along, and he was a young 20-year-old who went into the trenches in the Argonne in France. He was quickly wounded and spent most of the war in a French hospital. With no interest on remaining on a farm, when he returned home in 1919, he took up residence with his new wife, Marie Bale, at 205 Park Avenue. So right before the 1920s, they take up residence here in Mount Airy. Charles Beck, his father, not sometime during the 20s, because I've seen him in the 1930 census, he quit farming. I think his son Ray took over the farm, and he moved to Mount Airy as well. He lived on East Church Street and worked in various places around town in his retirement. And just a few blocks from where Charles II and Charles III have lived their entire lives since. Let's see. Herman and Marie, of course, began their family immediately. Our dad, Herman B., was Herman Jr. He was born in 1920, followed by his sister Clara Bale, then Pat and Charles II. B, Pat, and Charles II all lived their lives, entire lives in Mount Airy. Clara Bale ventured off to California. And if you know Mount Airy history, you know that Herman was Mount Airy's first fire chief. He was first elected in 1926 and served into 1954. The origins of Beck's Hatchery, of course, started in the basement of 205 Park Avenue. Marie was the one that started things, hatching eggs for the neighbors, soon after they had settled on Park Avenue. One of our first incubators, displayed at the museum for a while, used a small kerosene lamp to warm the eggs. The origin story includes a fire in the basement of 205 Park Avenue from the heating lamp on one of the incubators. The fire occurred in the mid-20s. The basement rafters are still charred. So Herman becomes the fire chief in 1926. His house almost burns down in the early 20s. Is there a coincidence there? So Beck's Hatchery began in the basement of 205 Park Avenue, quickly grew to include a large 40 by 80 foot building, 11 feet from the back of the house. They then purchased an adjacent farm at the end of Center Street and subsequent construction of a 4-story chicken house with all the modern conveniences, freight elevator, automatic feeding systems, among other things. Instead of expanding to compete with the likes of the Purdue family, among others, the Becks retired from the business in the 50s with son Pat continuing with the farm. Park Avenue Hatchery building was closed in '55 and was damaged beyond repair during the Hurricane Agnes in '72. I got to tear the building down over a 2-year period since I bought the house in '81. And basically with crowbar and sledge, I knocked that thing down. My dad, of course, he had a nice wood stove, so he sawed up all the rafters and cut them up into firewood. I think he said he got about 20 cords of wood out of it. The farm's hatchery building, the large concrete one down on the farm, was destroyed by arson in '74. Our family, the B. Beck family, gets started in '46 with the marriage of B. to Mary Jane Waltz of Winfield. Grandfather Clifton Waltz was a mortician and casket maker on Sam's Creek Road in Winfield. The first Waltz funeral home was at their residence. Son Buddy continued the operation, and today it's the Burrier Queen Funeral Home, right next to South Carroll High School. Mary Jane was the youngest of 4 children and was a career elementary school teacher. I think one of her favorite people to work with is sitting in the audience here.
Right in front of us.
Lady by the name of Althea Miller. B had a career as a budget officer for the federal government, coached baseball, served the Lions Club in many ways, served the town in many ways, including being unofficial historian for quite a while, worked in town government a good bit, and he was a columnist for the local newspapers. Of course, he was the unofficial historian for quite a while. Mom was a career elementary school teacher and managed the household pretty much. My brother Sam comes along in '52. I follow in '55, and Mark comes along in '58. We first started our time in Mt Airy on Plainview Drive over off of Hill Street. The Lomans, wonderful Dot Loman, our teacher. Can't hear me? Okay. Dot Loman was one of our neighbors, as well as the Dubles, he was a professional fireman, Montgomery County, was that? I forget. Yeah. Of course, I only lived there until I was 3 years old, so the only thing I remember of that home is walking into the woods in the back, down to the railroad tracks to squish pennies. I love the farms that border our home on Beck Drive. My teachers, especially 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Bellison, Mrs. Pearl Bellison, was my absolute favorite. I grew up with something that's called an essential tremor that causes a shake in my hands, my voice. And I'd never forget one time all the kids in class were required to stand up and read their report. And I was absolutely terrified. And I got up there and I couldn't even hold my papers still to read it. And she gave me a big hug and held my hands close and got me through that. And I just never forgot that. It's just one of those things, you know. Teachers. So I loved the farms that bordered our place, the teachers. Played club soccer for 20 years after high school. My career closely followed my dad's, which sent me down into DC for quite a while. With early retirement, it enabled many of my passions, including many misguided hikes at the Grand Canyon. Currently, I live in the home on Park Avenue with my dear wife Penny, with nieces and grandnephews that have lived there over time. We have had 5 generations in that house so far. Marg's arrival sparks a move to a new house on the corner of the family farm on Park Avenue, spurring the start of Beck Drive. Marg lives with her family in the house now, and Sam and his family lives over on Buffalo Road. So there's 2 generations where at least 3 of the kids have all stayed put. We kind of like this place. With that, I'll shut up and turn it over. Who wants to go first? Sam?
Well, we moved from Winfield because grandmother Waltz was very sick, and when I was first born, we were staying with them so Mom could take care of my grandmother. When she passed was when we moved to Plainview Avenue, and we lived there until I was in 2nd grade, about 6 years old. And one of my memories is I would walk downtown to Miss Libby Harrison's store and buy baseball cards. And she had a little variety store right across from the firehouse, but I was only 5 or 6 and I was walking down there. I don't know that would be wise today, but back then my time was filled with playing baseball and baseball cards, and like Cliff said, there was Bill Wagner lived on one corner of Plainview. Miss Mount lived on the other corner. Everybody I think knows Miss Mount. And then it was the Norrises, Dot and Lester Lohman, and then our house, and then the woods down to the railroad tracks. And we would play in the woods all day. And then one of my memories was on Friday nights, Dad always did the grocery shop. And he'd go downtown and I'd go with him, and he would go in the grocery stores down there, and I would go to Watkins 5 and 10, buy more baseball. After that, I would go back and meet him at the grocery store, and then we always stayed for the drawing. There was a drawing downtown I think it was Friday night, and I never knew what the prize was for winning the drawing, but we were there every week. But Dad always did the grocery shop.
That was the Acme, wasn't
I'm not sure. I remember the American store. I think it was the American store.
It was all the grocery stores went together and put it in for a drawing.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, I never knew
And
what
then
the prize
8 o'clock
was, but
after
we were
the
down
draw,
there.
they rolled up the streets and everybody was gone within 5 minutes.
Yeah. But there was always a crowd.
Yeah.
And, the drawing was held, they had the barrel that they spun around and it sat on the steps there at the Riddle Moser building. And where they had the drawing. I remember the carnival when it was in Wildwood Park. I don't know how long it was in Wildwood Park, but the carnival was there, I know 1 year. But, I got in a little trouble with that carnival 1 year.
We're learning something.
Had two of my older cousins, and it was really their idea.
They aren't here.
We were, of course, we lived right next to the woods, so there were acorns everywhere. So we decided to we had a lunch bag, and we filled it with acorns, and decided to get on the Ferris wheel.
Oh.
And when we got up top, we threw acorns. And that was when I was 5 or 6. But needless to say, I got in trouble for that. There were no children here.
The bus gave you a ticket?
After I finished 2nd grade, Marg was coming along, so Mom and Dad moved to Beck Drive. And there were a lot more kids my age on Beck Drive than there were over on Plainview. And there was a huge open field across the street from us, and we would play baseball or football out there all day long. Seemed like from the time the sun came up until it went down. And we had a baseball field, we had a backstop, and the whole, but
I have a question.
we were up there all the time.
Do you know who owned that field?
Wasn't that Ralph Pickens?
No.
No, it was not.
It
It's
was
the house
Norwood.
beside.
Norwoods.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Before the Ridge Swim Club was built, the only in-ground pool, and you all may be able to correct me on this, the only in-ground pool, I think, Preston Brown
Browns, yeah.
had an in-ground pool.
That is correct.
That's correct.
And,
Yes,
being-
he was. He was rich.
Yeah.
I know.
But we were lucky he was in our neighborhood and they let us swim on occasion. I remember, I think it was put on by the Kiwanis Club. They had a hobby show every year in elementary school, in the lobby in the elementary school. And I would take my baseball cards and of that year, and of course, Dad being in the Lions Club, he always had the posters that it put on in the store windows and all, and he always had all the extra, or seemed like he had all extra posters every year. So I would take my baseball cards and tape them on the back of those posters for my display at the hobby store, or at the hobby show. And you would try and win a prize and all. So, but I always enjoyed getting ready for the hobby show. And I was in Boy Scouts, and one of the best things about the Boy Scouts, we did the Winding Trail campground down across from Isaac Walton. It was where our campsite was, and having campouts on the weekends. Now in my teen years, I was on a bowling team. I was a young teen. I was on a bowling team at the old bowling alley down on Main Street. And there were four lanes. Four lanes, duck pin lanes.
Guys working as setters.
I can't remember if they had put in the automatic setters when I was doing that, or if they still had the boys setting
They still had the
pins.
boys set the pins.
Down there.
They were setting pins up until the early seventies. They still had boys
Well,
setting
then
pins.
they were still setting them when I was bowling, because I was younger than that. I wasn't a very good bowler, but it was a lot of fun. And the other thing I remember from my teen years were the dances at the Firemen's Activities Village. They would be on, I think, Saturday nights, and I can't remember how many times a month, whether it was once a month or twice a month, but it seemed like there were a lot of them. And then during the carnival, they were every night.
The prodigals.
Woody Graham,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Woody Graham, Mike Kelly,
Yeah.
and I can't remember the
Willie
singer's
Cybers.
name.
he just died too, Woody Graham
Yeah.
did.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Willie
He lived
Cybers.
on Paradise, didn't
Who, Willie Cybers?
Yeah.
Woody Graham.
Woody Graham, yeah.
When he
For
was
a
married,
while, yes,
yeah,
to
when he was
Darlene.
married to
Yes.
Darlene Dorsey, they were married, they lived in that house there in Paradise.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, going up the hill.
Yep.
But growing up in Mount Airy back then was a blast. And, now in retirement, as I revisit and organize my baseball cards to pass.
Some things never go away.
To pass down to my kids, I realize how many hundreds, no, probably thousands of dollars worth of cards that are ruined with tape to win.
I was thinking when you say you taped it.
One of these. That's a yellow, that's not a blue.
That was the only one I
It's
could
still a
find.
ribbon.
Thank you.
I also did the hobby thing, and I collected dolls from all over the world. And I had a few blue ribbons.
Yeah, I think I did too, but this is the only,
Only one I could find.
that was the only one I could find.
Well,
Speak up.
my, best memories were when I was real little, before 27 was put in, we would go sled riding from where the Ridge Swim Club is, up there, and go all the way down the field, down to the farm that was down where the shopping center is now.
Right through the White's front door.
Yeah. And David Brown, who lived there in the neighborhood, he would have his Scout or something that he had, some truck that he had, and he would make us a path all the way down. And then when we'd have a barrel with a fire out burning at the top to get warm, and you'd go all the way down, and he would load everybody up in his Scout and bring us back up to the top. But all the neighborhood did it. Did you all go do that?
Maybe remember once or twice.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun times. I remember Dad would lay on the sled and I would climb on top and we'd go all the way there.
That was Kramer's farm.
Kramer's, I couldn't remember whose farm that was, okay. And then, I was in the Girl Scouts and Brownies and Girl Scouts. And I can't remember who my Brownie leader was, but I know my Girl Scout leader was Jean Caldwell and Sis Ogren. And we would have our meetings upstairs of the firehouse, which is where the upper deck is now. So it was always fun. We would go in there and they would always have the big black and white pictures of accidents back in that one room, and all us girls would go back there and look at them and be like, scared and all. It was crazy. But that was a big thing back then. And then, I don't know if anybody else in here was one of these, but I was one of the first sparklers majorette group that was in Mt Airy. And that was in, I think, I have pictures here that is from 1968. And I think that was the first year that they started.
Could have been.
Were you all part of the sparklers?
Marcy was.
Marcy
Marcy
was,
And
okay.
I played them 1 year, and I played the glockenspiel.
I wanted badly to be in the sparklers, but I
We
wasn't
never
allowed.
did it.
I was too little, so she made me a uniform,
To be.
and I had a baton, and I would stand out when you guys would go by and just.
Yeah, and it was, the majorette group was such a big thing back then. I mean, we
I
went.
was a drummer.
Yep, he was in the drum corps. But we went to all the parades and the carnivals and competed, and it was a big thing. And I have pictures of that too, if anybody wants to see them.
I do. I want them for the historical society.
And then I also was on a bowling league at the Mt Airy Lanes, but mine was in the 70s that I started. I think it was like around 72, 73, and I did it through till I graduated, and that was always a lot of fun. Monday night ladies league.
That was the Center Street.
Yes, the
Bowling
new
alley.
bowling alley, yes. So that was always fun. But my favorite thing of my whole life was the Ridge Swim Club. And I grew up there, I practically lived there. When I was a kid, Laurie and Dale Nieper were the managers, and they did that for 24 years. And but we had the best times. They were both school teachers, so they would come to Mt Airy and run the pool every year, but they were actually lived in Bel Air. And she would teach, she taught us water ballet. We had water ballet classes in the evenings, and then we would put on shows for everybody. And she would design the costumes, she choreographed everything we did, and our parents had to make the costumes. She would send the patterns in, our parents had to do them. But we did those for years. We had big crowds, believe it or not, for these shows. People would actually line up and wait for the doors to open to get there. And we also would have, they taught swimming lessons, they taught diving lessons. They were just, they did it all. They were great. And they organized, and we'd have big family parties and campouts, and people would bring their campers and tents and set up in the field, and everybody would just have great times.
They
And-
stayed with the Bondies when they came up. for the
Yes,
summer.
yes.
Yeah, with Valley.
Yep,
We had daughter Angie that they raised in their
yep.
playpen.
That's right.
That's
She was
right.
born and raised there at the pool. And then, I mean, it was the best place to hang out. All the friends would be there, all our neighborhood friends, and we had Pickett Store up at the corner, so when they'd call break for 10 minutes, everybody would grab their money and run up to Pickett Store to get their big buddies and candy and everything, and try to get back to the pool before break was over.
So we all practically lived at the pool from the time it opened until it shut down at night. And Sam and I both played baseball for our dad's team, the Lions Club team. And he had a rule every summer that on days when we had a Little League game, we could not go swimming, go up to the pool, because we would be so exhausted by the time the game came around that we wouldn't play very well, so I'll never forget that rule.
Not me, I lived there, and I still do. And it was, I happened to have some pictures that Nick Burns had given me, and there's pictures with all of our gang sitting on the diving board. So I got a hold of a bunch of people this summer, and we had a little reunion. And I hope we can keep doing that and have it grow, and more people come. But that's about it for me. If anybody wants to see these pictures.